If you missed it yesterday, the big summer show was launched for Games Workshop, and that is basically a whole laundry list of reveals for all of the games that they're going to be looking at doing releases for over the next few months. Now, obviously there was a pretty big announcement for Old World, but there are some other things that I think are worth talking about. So if we just flick through down here, you can see there's some 40k stuff we don't care about, or you may care about, but I personally don't. Lots of, Horus Heresy, smaller games, and then we've got this, Underworlds. Now, if you're not aware of Underworlds, I definitely check it out. Even if you're not interested in playing the game, the way that Underworlds works is it's lots of fantasy warbands, and some of the models in them I think are pretty fantastic in terms of having stuff that you can use as character models or various other bits and pieces for your fantasy armies. So we'll look at that one in a second. Helmsmiths of Hashut, easy for me to say. This is the Chaos Dwarf army that's been rumoured for a while, but it is only, unfortunately, for Age of Sigmar. We'll have a look through those miniatures, talk about whether I think you should be looking at taking them and putting them into your, running them in Old World. And obviously, we've also got the Tomb Kings here, which is a true blue, proper Old World release, and there is plenty of stuff in there, a couple of Arcane journals to talk about as well. This video is brought to you by the Close Order Coaching Patron. If you're interested in more information than you can get on a Fix My List, or you're looking to work on specific aspects of your game that maybe I haven't covered in a video, this is the place to do so. Coaching comes in two tiers, either a one-on-one, 1 hour chat where we can discuss list building, various aspects of your game, what you'd like to improve on, or a 3-hour coaching game where we can go more in depth onto certain aspects. Both tiers come with a personal Discord channel where you can ask me questions, get list advice, or just plan out what we want to address in the next session. If you have any questions, you can ask on the coaching section of the Close Order Discord, and you can book my time anywhere from 9 AM to 11 PM local time, depending on the day. Starting off with the Chaos Dwarves, and I think it's worth having a very quick look through at these. Obviously, there's always a nice fluff teaser trailer here that comes with these sorts of releases. Watch that on your own time. I won't plagiarize their content, but is it worth picking these models up if you want to play Chaos Dwarves in Warhammer the Old World? I would say, if you don't already have a Chaos Dwarf army, and you're not okay with potentially having that army become unusable in fantasy in the not too distant future, I wouldn't recommend picking this one up. Chaos Dwarves, as a legacy faction, are an army that might not be supported by Games Workshop when we get round to 2nd edition. They've said that they're not going to do that. They've also then said that the scope of the project has changed, so I'm hoping that they're going to start bringing things in. But with rumours of how things are internally, with not being able to use the same army in, Age of Sigmar and Fantasy, there is a world where maybe we just don't see Chaos Dwarves in the Old World at all for the next 10 years or something like that. So if you really like Chaos Dwarves and you want to play them in Fantasy, this is a way you can do it. Just be aware that you are buying into somewhat of a risk, and I'm expecting the 2nd edition of Old World to come out in about 1.5 years, 1.5 to 2 years, and that might be the shelf life on this army. You might not be able to use them going forwards. Plus, given that it's a new Age of Sigmar army, you're going to be spending a lot more money. They're going to be Age of Sigmar prices. You're going to be getting 10 models for the price of what you'd be paying for, 20 or 30 models in the Old World. So there's definitely some downsides. However, if you hear all of that and you go, I don't care, I just want my big hats, that's super fair. That's super fair. I think the models are fantastic. Let's have a quick look through at them and just talk about what it is that you need in terms of an army. So we've got some foot characters here. Plenty of fluff, which is completely irrelevant because I think the Hashut version that they've gone for in the Age of Sigmar game is completely different to the lore that they would have in Old World. So I'm not going to bother flicking through, looking at the rules or anything like that. Any spoilers? We do have some really nice models, and they do come with a variety of weapons. So hand weapon shield, obviously, that's probably where we're going to be landing in terms of the infantry game at the moment, but it is nice to see that they've also got some options. You can take great weapons, there's some spears as well. Not really sure what the spears would translate to here, but if we go down as well, and we just look at the other options for the infantry, here we go. We do have some big guns. Obviously, you can bring the blunderbuss. I don't think there's really anything that translates for the halberd / gun that they can take as well. But if you wanted to go blunderbuss, there are some options here with Chaos Dwarves suitably adorned with ranged weapons. So good stuff there if you want to run some Chaos Dwarf infantry. Then we do have the Bombard that can also be run as the Death Shrieker Rocket Battery, and you might recognize the name of the Death Shrieker Rocket Battery because that is, just a straight translation from the fantasy version of Dwarves. So if you're looking for the artillery, this is a nice kit, and it does give you a couple of different options there. even if you're not a Chaos Dwarf player, I could see people potentially taking this kit and using it as some sort of artillery. I am curious what size base it's on. If that's you know, like an 80mm round base, you might struggle to put it onto something to translate into an old world size model, but it looks really good, and that would be your artillery pieces. This here, I'm not sure has a place, the Dominator engine. It's a very Marmite model, I think. You're either going to love this or hate this. I personally think it looks too chunky, and I know dwarves are meant to look chunky, but it just feels like it doesn't have any mobility. However, maybe there's something you could do with it. A giant, allied chaos giant, using this. Oops, something like that could be interesting. But yeah, maybe not one that makes it into your army, which is a little bit of a shame, because if we look up at the starter box, you can see here you get 10 infantry, a character, 1 war machine, and then this big beastie. So might be a little bit difficult to use the starter box to get into there. A book we don't care about because there's no rules for us, and then there's a really nice Sorcerer Prophet. This is a model that I could see people using in terms of, even if they were, you know, had a Warriors of Chaos list and they just wanted a really fancy sorcerer, something like that. I think this model's fantastic, and I think it translates well across to Old World, even if you don't want to take it in terms of Chaos Dwarves. There's probably a couple of different armies that could use it. This chappy here, also, you know, a pretty standard battle standard bearer. There's probably some world for someone to do an actual dwarf army with this and just play them as dwarven mountain holds, but they're, you know, very much chaos corrupted and similar if you wanted to go down that theme. So this is, you know, obviously you've got some sort of melee character / battle standard bearer potentially. Now, these are nice. I do really like the Bull, Centaur, Taurus models that we've got here. So this is one of the things that's hardest to put together if you're playing Chaos Dwarves at the moment. So if you have a Chaos Dwarf army already, this is something that you might want to pick up to add to that one. I would personally be going with this version of the models and then pairing it with these heads, but, you know, it looks like it's a kit with a decent amount of options. You know, just looks really solid, and it's nice to have some nice Bull Centaur models that you can actually put on the tabletop. We've talked about the ranged infantry already, and then we've actually got the Hobgrots, which is nice, and these look exactly as I feel they should. I think they look fantastic. Obviously, if you were running Chaos Dwarves before, you might have used nice Night Goblin models or something like that, but I think these are very flavourful, and I think these are probably going to make it into people's lists. Maybe people might use these as new, modern, updated, regular goblins. I think they look great. Or if you're playing Ogre Kingdoms, obviously another legacy faction, but you want some slightly nicer grots, this is definitely a direction that you could go down. So, really like these models. I might end up picking some up myself, even though I'm probably not going to do a Chaos Dwarf list. Then the big thing. If you have Chaos Dwarves already, and you don't have, you know, mounts that you're happy with, this thing is an absolute beast. The Bull, Centaur, Taurus, or the other version of it, it's a very metallic looking flying bull. I really like what they've done with it. I think it is a little bit Marmite as well, especially with this paint scheme, given that it's got sort of fading or a little bit of blended colour towards the bottom of these wings. I think some people are going to look at this and be a little bit put off. I really like this model. It feels to me like an infernal construct, which is kind of what I'm wanting in terms of Chaos Dwarf characters. With that said, I think, again, you could very happily take this and use it if you wanted to have a dragon. Obviously, it's not a dragon, but there's a lot of flexibility in how we use models, as long as it's clearly represented on the tabletop. You could very comfortably put a Chaos Sorcerer on top of this, and then you've got a Chaos Sorcerer riding a dragon, but in a way that feels less like it's a combat mount and more like it's a piece that you're using to carry around your Great Wizard, which is obviously relevant given that it's the Sorcerer Prophet riding one here. So really like this model. Do keep in mind that it is going to come in at Age of Sigmar prices, so you're probably going to be paying £100, $140, whatever that converts to in terms of Age of Sigmar. So there may be some sticker shock on this if you've only been playing Old World and haven't been looking at the Age of Sigmar prices. Book again, and that is it. So just to reiterate, I would be careful about starting this army if you haven't got Chaos Dwarfs already. There is a world where legacy factions end up being unsupported. Obviously, then that becomes a discussion where the community may take over in terms of running them, but that is going to fracture it, and your playgroup may not pick that up, or your local tournament scene may not pick that up, whatever that may be. So just be aware that if you're getting into this army, there is a little bit of risk in terms of doing so. But if you're not worried about that, the models are gorgeous. So I may do a dwarf army using these models, and then be able to flex in to have Chaos Dwarves as and when I want them, because I think that would be really nice. And look, we've got a Stone Thrower here and another War Machine. I haven't quite worked out the details yet. That's something that I probably wouldn't be doing for a year or two, but it's something I've got in the back of my mind for a future piece of content, potentially. Next up, getting through the fantasy adjacent pieces, we've got the Underworlds expansion set. Now, this is something that I want to point out because I really like these models. I like this, and, well, there's 3 models in the box, unfortunately, so it's going to be very difficult to do a full unit, but this is, I think, a fantastic replacement for a stag-mounted character in Wood Elves, obviously, that has the Wild Rider Kindred. I think that's a really nice, flavourful piece where you can add a lot of character to models. This one does the same, so you can potentially have 2 stag characters that are taking up space in Wild Rider units, potentially. And then we've got this one as well, which I'm not really sure how I'd use this third model, but I really like them in terms of trying to fit them into a Wild Hunt themed Wood Elf army, so potentially that is something that you would look at as well. There's also the new Chaos Dwarves that come in it, and again, if you're going down the line of doing Chaos Dwarves or maybe, normal dwarves, but under the influence of chaos and just using the Dwarven Mountain Hold army list. A couple of really nice character models here. A Battle Standard Bearer. I like this as a BSB. I think this is really good. And then maybe just a flavorful unit champion. Or I guess if you go in dwarves, this is the Thane with the bursting flame rune. I can't say that I've seen any model more fitting for a dwarf with the gun that fires shots that explodes than this one here. And then this is probably just end up being a unit champion or a base filler or something like that. But I think if you are interested in either of the 2 armies, Wood Elves or Chaos Dwarves or converted dwarves, this is probably a box that would be worth having a look at. Whether or not you buy it individually, you can always look at picking up individual models on eBay or, splitting a box with a friend, something like that. But just be aware that these models exist, and I won't go through the rest of them, but if I scroll down, it starts to show us all of the other things. So, this is probably no good, but if you had some sort of Dark Elf list, you've got some nice models here for Assassins. If you're playing Lizardmen, you've got some good, very... What's the word I'm looking for? The opposite of stationary. They've got good mobility in their poses. They're good character models here for Lizardmen. Maybe not here in case of this one, but we've got some nice Skaven. Got some interesting chaos if you go Warriors of Chaos, but you more lean towards the Wolves of the Sea style vibe. If you're one of the 3 players who plays demons, you're probably aware of these models alongside these ones here as well. But this would also flex into Warriors of Chaos. And then, if we just go down to the last couple of pieces, some really nice sculpts for vampire counts. I think these are really lovely, alongside some more zombies. But if you wanted a necromancer, you could get them from that box, and so on and so forth. Just be aware that Underworlds exists. You don't have to play it to like the models in it, and they're a relatively cheap pickup. Off the top of my head, I think they're about £25-30 for the box of models, which, given that character models often come in at 20 to 30 quid anyway, you end up with not an unreasonable cost if you can manage to get the box individually. They've started to bundle them together, so that makes it more difficult. But as always, look at eBay if you're looking for individual models. There's some really nice sculpts that I'd recommend picking up, and I have been doing so as well for my armies. With that preamble out of the way, let's have a look at the actual Old World release. We've got Tomb Kings, and we've got Cathay, and we've got other stuff in here as well. So, first of all, we've got some new models for Tomb Kings. Kind of nice because we are now 18 months since the Tomb Kings Arcane Journal came out. It was the first thing that came out, so going back to Tomb Kings as the next set of upgrades is a good one. We're seeing 2 boxes here. Obviously, we've seen when Old Worlds come back, they've brought back the foot and mounted character boxes, which I think are fantastic. The new ones have less options than the old ones, but they're also nicer models, so there is a little bit of give and take there. And there's the Royal Herald box set. So you've got... It says Royal Heralds. I think you could very comfortably run these as Tomb Kings or Tomb Princes if you want to. So it's just a really nice, flexible kit in terms of how you want to... if you're looking for foot or mounted melee characters for Tomb Kings, this is the way to go. Really nice kit there. It says 3 left and right arm options, so... One of them's obviously the shield, one of them's obviously the Battle Standard Bearer. Maybe it's a great weapon as well. I'll be interested in seeing these. I do like picking these kits up, even if I'm not playing the army. I think they're just a really nice kit to build and have as individual models. We've also got, very similar, the Lich Priest doing the same thing. And what I will say is these are really nice. They are quite busy models. If your army is, if you're using older Tomb King models, I think these have more detail in a very significant way. Do I think that's an issue for Tomb Kings? Not particularly. I think the characters having a lot more adornment than anything else in the army makes a lot of sense, and it fits thematically. It does concern me a little bit if that's the direction we're going to move in, where things stop looking like the rest of the models and they start looking very busy. I think in this case it's fine, but just do be aware it is going to take you a little bit longer to paint these than it does take to paint the regular models. Again, we've got 4 heads, numerous other options, 1 mounted, 1 on foot. This is a good kit, just, you know, it's not unlikely that you're going to want to run 2 Lich Priests. 1 on horse, 1 on foot is a pretty reasonable way to do things. So yeah, 2 really nice kits here. Glad to see these for Tomb Kings, because it does feel like the character models outside of the big boxes where you buy like a Necrosphinx or the Bone Dragon, which come with characters, feels outside of that they're a little bit lacking. They're also coming with a new Arcane journal, and there's 2 of these. So let's start off with War for Cetra's Fury, or War of Cetra's Fury. So it's a new Arcane journal describing Cetra's full-scale invasion into the Border Princes and Vaults. Oh, Border Princes, that's interesting. The mountain range to the south of Bretonnia, and the efforts of some unlikely allies in resisting it. So interesting that we've got a book that is so heavily themed around Tomb Kings, and only, like, if you think about this in terms of shelf presence, it looks like it's only for Tomb King players, but if we scroll down, you'll see that actually there's a lot more in there. So what does it come with? It's the usual 48 pages, which is the standard we've got. Mounts for Kemrian characters is interesting. Incantations of the Mortuary Cult and various armies of infamy. Various armies of infamy is really interesting. So to me, this sounds like there's going to be 3 armies of infamy in here. 1 for Tomb Kings, 1 for Dwarf Slayers, and 1 for Border Princes. There have been rumours about a Dogs of War faction or Dogs of War army of infamy coming in for a while, and it feels to me like this might be exactly what we're getting here with the Border Princes. Maybe we're going to see some of those old classic Dogs of War sculpts coming back. Hopefully we see some new models as well. There have been rumours about a couple of plastic box sets of really flexible loadout models, which is what you'd expect from Dogs of War. You know, a unit that can be equipped with spears or handguns or crossbows or pikes, all of the things that you've come to, you know, it's been a while since we've had Dogs of War, but all of the things you've come to expect from a Dogs of War faction in one box. Sort of like the new, the Empire box set, the whatever there's a great box set for Empire, which is very good for if you're playing more time. One of the old infantry boxes, the whatever, it'll come to mind. If I remember, I'll put a picture up on the screen. But that kit comes with a lot of options in it, and I'm hoping that this is going to be very similar, and we get something similar for Border Princes. Dwarven Slayers is interesting as well. I have heard rumours, and I think there was some talk about on the stream about something to do with a ward save for Slayers, so that could make them much more interesting, given that currently they're just toughness 4 naked dwarves, which does not make them survive for very long. So definitely excited to see these, and I'm interested to hear what the release schedule is going to be, because we know that this Arcane Journal, Dawn of the Storm Dragon, which we'll talk about in a second, we know that one's going to be coming this year from a previous post on Warhammer Community. Are we expecting to see Cetra's Fury first? We are currently in the middle of July, so we've really only got 4 months for releases. Games Workshop don't really release anything in December, so we've got August, September, October, November, 4 months to have releases come in. We could have 2 Arcane Journals in there, so we could very comfortably have both of these releases before we get to 2026, which I think would be fantastic. It might well have also said in this article here, or maybe in the video, that all of this is due to come this year. If that is the case, please do let me know. I typically don't watch through the reveal videos. I know that there's, you know, extra details in there that are interesting, but I do find that there is a lot of sort of time that doesn't necessarily cover things, and I just flick through to have a look at the interesting shots. So if they have said what the timescale on these is and I've just missed it, please do let me know in the comments. Next, Arcane Journal Dawn of the Storm Dragon. This is the additional Arcane Journal that we were told we were going to be getting for Cathay. They also said we weren't going to be getting any new models, and we'll get onto, you know, something about timescales for new models after we talk about this. So This is in the spring of 2027, so advancing the plot of the game by 1 year, as the Chaos Champion Friedel ransacks the northern reaches of the Empire. Mao Ying sets out of Grand Cathay to beat back the signs of the Dark Gods and to intent on diplomacy with the Empire of Man as well. Interesting. So what does this mean? Obviously, there was a rumour post the other day, which I'm not entirely sure has much merit to it, because a lot of stuff on there, I think, doesn't line up with what we're seeing. But there are rumours that it's going to be a lot of Empire units used alongside the Cathay units. That would be an interesting way to fill the gaps in the roster, because obviously it's a smaller number of units and it gives you a lot more flexibility. The Arcane Journal details the turbulent history of Cathay alongside the warriors and heroes involved in these battles. It comes with terrain generation tables, guidelines for multiplayer games, linked battles, and a new army of infamy, the Jade Fleet, an alliance between the Grand Cathay and the people of Westland. So this is the Empire and Cathay ally. Now, I don't love that this book here theoretically has 3 armies of infamy. It says it's definitely got 2, but I think it probably has 3, given that it's Tomb Kings and then there's Dwarves and Border Princes. So I'm expecting 3 armies of infamy here. This is saying that it's only going to give us 1. I think that is a poor allocation of new rules. And I know that not everyone buys these books for the new rules, but I would like it more if they tried to standardize where every book comes with 2 different armies of infamy in it. That way you can buy a book if you're interested in what comes in, whether it's the fluff that's in it. Obviously they do have actual stories. It's one of the only ways that the old world background is being furthered and fleshed out as it stands, because there's not, I haven't been doing anything Black Library. I think there's been 1 Black Library release over the entirety of Old World. Maybe I'm out of date with that, but I know they weren't releasing anything specifically for Old World from Black Library recently. So it's the only way that we're really getting more information about the setting, which is great, and people who like that are probably going to buy this, pick this up and read that through. Fantastic stuff. Really love that that's in there. Then extra stuff here, terrain generation tables, guidelines for multiplayer games, link battles. Hell yeah, like I'd love to see more of that. I think having that sort of stuff, adding value to the book, so it's not just for the people who want to play that specific army might be interested in. I think that's good for consumers, in that there's, you know, a book, if there's 2 armies of infamy in each book, that's only 2 of the 13 factions, you know, however many factions there are, 12 factions, only 2 of the factions are going to get rules. So if you add stuff in, maybe people don't buy, you know, the book, but some more people are going to buy it, because there's not only the fluff in there, but there's also some rules like terrain generation tables and multiplayer game guidance. So that's going to tick the boxes for consumers. Also good for the business. You're adding value in a way that is positive. You know, people are more likely to buy it without just feeling like they have to buy it, but they're going to buy it because it's giving them something that they want without having to go too deep. There is always, when we start to get deep into an edition, lots of these, I've heard them referred to as splat books. People are annoyed that they have to come to a table with 5 actual books. I think that's less of a thing now because PDFs exist. Yeah, there's definitely a point you get to where maybe there is too much rules bloat and it's hard to keep track, but I am in favour of the system they have. I just wish that they'd do it a little bit more consistently, so that you were always getting 2 new sets of rules in each book, instead of going, here's 3 and here's 1. I think that would just add more value in terms of making sure each book brings roughly the same amount of use to players. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is the League of Votan, and that's weird because this is a very 40k army. It's nothing to do with what we normally talk about here, and I'm not going to talk about the models or anything like that. Obviously, if we go down, just to very quickly summarize, we're getting character, new unit, new unit / artillery, new bikes, so I guess this would be the equivalent of cavalry or something, new book, new way to buy them in terms of combat patrol. So you can see that this is a pretty decently sized release for the Votan. Why am I bringing this up? Well, if we look back 3 years ago, 1st of September 2022, so it pretty much is exactly 3 years ago, this is when Votan were unveiled. With a quick pass, I haven't found the exact release date, but I think it was something like October or November of 2022. So it's been about 3 years. And when they came out, obviously there was a balance issue with them, not to draw any parallels to Cathay. But they also came out with a very limited unit roster. They came with, just here's the sort of Terminator equivalent, the heavy infantry equivalent. Here's the regular infantry. Here's the one cavalry or bike unit. So they didn't have all that much stuff, and that's very similar to what we've got for Cathay. We know that when Games Workshop launch a new army, obviously it's a huge undertaking for them. They can only justify releasing a certain number of kits. The rumours behind the scenes are that the first draft of Cathay had a lot more units. They had peasants in, for example, but they were told you can only have this many kits, so they had to go back to more of a baseline as opposed to what we could have had previously. So the timeline for what I think we're likely to see Wave 2 of Cathay, and the reason I bring this up, I think within the next 3 years, or in about 3 years' time, we're probably going to see the second wave of Cathay. And I think that's just something that should be people who are getting into the Cathay, or are maybe wanting to get into Cathay but want to wait until there's more releases or more options. I think it's just worth looking at this as an example, because it's the last army that they released for a different game as a full new army, as far as I can tell. It's about a 3-year turnaround, I would say, between, Wave 1 and Wave 2. So I can't guarantee that Cathay are definitely getting a second wave in 3 years' time, but I think there's a very good likelihood that we're going to be seeing more units, some more characters, some more bits and pieces, a good amount of stuff coming for Cathay 3 to maybe 4 years down the line. Thank you for watching. Thank you for getting to the end of the video. If you've reached this point and you haven't already, I would really appreciate a like, a comment, a subscription if you haven't done those things. It just helps me get seen by more people, boost me up in the algorithm, all of the stuff that the YouTubers do like to say. If you would like to support me in my goal to become a full-time YouTuber, I would absolutely appreciate that. You can become a member below. There are various perks to those, name at the end of the videos, all that good stuff, but it also unlocks some VIP areas in Discord if you become a Longbeard or Ground Knight tier supporter. Those VIP sections are the only parts that are locked away in Discord. You don't have to be a member to join the Discord. I'd recommend that you should. We've got about 450, 500 people on there. It's a great place for discussion, a lot of fun. I do try and chime in as much as possible. And it's also where the Fix My List show lists are put, and also if you are one of the Ground Knight or Longbeard tier supporters, where you participate in choosing which list I play in the monthly Pick My List series.